Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Greg Williams and I will be your host for today's webinar. Today's program is part of our ISD Now series brought to you by the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, also known as UMBC. UMBC is a public university located in Baltimore, Maryland. We have been ranked by U.S. World Report and U.S. News as the #1 up-and-coming university for 2 years in a row. We were also recently featured in a segment on CBS's 60 Minutes. Today's webinar is sponsored by the UMBC Online Graduate Program in Instructional Systems Development. Now, this is the exciting part you've all been waiting for, the administrative announcements. If you have any technical difficulties, such as trouble hearing the audio, please call the GoToWebinar support line at 1-800-263-6317. If you continue to have audio problems, please log off and then log back into the webinar. I strongly advise everyone to close any other web browsers or software applications, since this may impact the quality of the webinar for you. You, as participants, will have the ability to ask a question using the question function. We will monitor the questions and then give Richard Byrne the ones that seem to strike a chord with the audience. We get hundreds of questions with these webinars, so please bear with us. Right now, we have many people online. With so many people online, we'll do our best to answer all your questions, but it's possible we might not get back to every single person. Additionally, so our presenter doesn't get sidetracked, we will answer your questions at the end of his presentation, about 45 minutes after the start of the webinar. The webinar is being recorded. We will email you the link as soon as the video is posted. Additionally, Richard's slides will also be available. We will provide you with the link after the webinar. So right now, I'd like to introduce Richard Byrne. Richard, are you out there?
I am.
Great. Let me give you a brief introduction and then hand over the presenter's wand to you. Richard Byrne teaches U.S. history and civics to high school students in Paris, Maine, and I hear it's beautiful in Paris this time of year, Richard. He has also taught courses in global studies and English. In 2009, he was nominated for EduBlog's Lifetime Achievement Award, and he also is a certified Google teacher. Many of you may be familiar with Richard's website, Free Technology for Teachers. The purpose of this website is to share information about free resources that teachers can use in their classrooms. The website and the blog has won numerous awards and is read by more than 36,000 subscribers daily. Okay? So let me hand over the presenter's wand to Richard. Richard, I'm now going to make you the presenter and we'll be seeing your screen. So here we go.
And there we are.
Okay. Richard, it's all yours.
Thank you. So thank you for having me here, Greg. It's great to do this second webinar for you. I did another one last summer, actually. I should rephrase that. And I want to start out by saying this is a unique webinar opportunity for me, as I'm actually on vacation. It's a school vacation week here in Maine, and I'm sure it is for many of you out there. I'm actually in Rockwood, Maine today, which is about as far north and west as you can go in Maine and not be in Canada. And we were ice fishing earlier today. And I'm actually now sitting in my truck using a wireless connection to bring you this webinar today.
Richard, you may want to click on the button that says Show Your Screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. There's a little icon that looks like a screen, and once you click that, they will actually see your screen.
And it should be on now.
Okay.
Do you see it now, Greg?
Yes, I see it.
Okay. I apologize for that. So as I was saying, this webinar is built around some questions I'm commonly asked whenever I give a workshop somewhere or I give a talk somewhere, or even in my own school, and people ask me about technology tools that they can use in their classroom. My first question is always, what do you want to do with the technology itself? Because there's a lot of really cool things out there, lots of technology gadgets. There's also tech websites that are really a lot of fun if you're kind of a geeky, techie person like me. But when we bring it to our classroom, it really has to have a purpose. As I go through the slides here today, all of my slides are organized around the idea of discovery, discussion, or demonstration, using the technology for one of those three ideas. One of the questions I'm always asked is, are slides available? These slides will be available at freetechforteachers.com shortly after this webinar. And if you do have other questions that we don't address during the question and answer period at the end of this webinar, feel free to reach me at Twitter or email me directly, Richard Byrne at freetechforteachers.com, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. The other question I'm often asked at the end of these webinars is, how do you have time to find all of these things? And the short answer to that is, I don't have kids, I have a dog at home. So let's talk about the discovery piece. And discovery is one of the fantastic features of the internet, that we can find out almost anything we want in a matter of minutes, if not less than that. And by default, our students are going to go to Google. If we give students a research topic or we give them a question to answer, something to investigate, by default they go to Google. One of the things we need to teach kids about Google is that Google is not the only search engine, and that Google doesn't search all of the web. In fact, there's some estimates out there that Google searches less than half of the web, because a lot of content is hidden behind paywalls or other access restrictions in various databases. And your school library or your public library probably has access to some of those resources. But since kids are going to use Google, I think it's important that we teach them to search Google effectively. But beyond Google, a search engine that's often overlooked is a search engine called Wolfram Alpha. Wolfram Alpha is fantastic for math students and science students. It's not a search engine in the sense of Google or Yahoo, in that you're going to look up questions about the Civil War, or questions about the Kardashians, or questions about things of that nature. It's more of a computational search engine. We're going to look for conversions. We're going to look for equations. We're going to find out how far it is from Mount Everest to London in meters or yards or miles or inches if we want to. And as our students gather information, and they gather their things from Google or from other search engines or from databases or from books, they need to be in the habit of citing them as they go. One of the things that I've seen my own students do is they will go to the library, they'll bookmark a website, and then they will forget what it was exactly about a website or a web page that they were looking for or that they need when they go to cite that source. And the service that we use in my school and that I've used for my own work is a service called EasyBib. EasyBib generates bibliographies or citation pages, if you will, for students based on the information that they input. There's a free model and a pay model. But one of the cool features of EasyBib that I really like is if your students are using an Android phone or they're using an iPhone, they can download the apps, scan the barcode that's on the back of a book, scan the ISBN barcode, and instantly have all the information they need for that citation stored in their phone, and they can share that information from their phone to their computer or their computer back to their phone. The social web, or social networks, if you will, is a great place to find information about recent events, information about developing trends. And if you're on Twitter, you probably already know about searching Twitter. However, if you're not on Twitter, or you tried Twitter in the past and you say, I don't quite get it, it's not for me, a lot of people do that. A lot of people get on Twitter and they don't quite get it at first and they give up. And that's okay. But one of the things you should know is that you can search Twitter at search.twitter.com without being a member of Twitter, first of all. Just go to search.twitter.com, And you can search for a trending topic or search for things that are being discussed. One of the best hashtags for educators is to search the hashtag #EdChat, which is a great way for educators to see what other educators are talking about. EdChat is actually organized on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's an hour-long session of discussion amongst educators, and all the tweets are tagged. It's a great way to connect with other educators. But the other thing I like about Twitter search is that if I'm looking for a new idea about how to teach the Civil War, and I apologize for skewing my examples towards the humanities. I've been a social studies teacher for a long time, taught English as well, as Greg pointed out. But I'll try to work in some math examples too. So if I'm trying to search for new ideas for teaching math, I might go to Twitter search and search EdChat and math and see what are people talking about in that regard. And the reason that I like this as opposed to going to Google to find my newest math idea or my newest English teaching idea is that Twitter is current. And oftentimes in Google, the top search engine results are not the most currently breaking or most currently trending information. They're things that have been on the longest and have become very popular because they've been on for a long time. One of the ways that I keep up with the news or keep up with trends in education is I use Google Reader. Google Reader is an RSS reader. And it's a great way for me to discover new information. Rather than going out and looking at my favorite 300 websites every day, I subscribe to 300 websites who send me their updates every day, and not in the form of email, because 300 emails would be just as cumbersome as going to 300 websites every day. Instead, my Google Reader account brings me all the updates in one centralized location that I can scroll through and quickly process the information, process the headlines, and if I want to, I can open up the articles and read the entire article. And this is good not only as an educator, but also for students, particularly if we're working with high school or college students who need to keep up with a current event, or they're researching a topic over a long period of time rather than going back and forth, going to the website and then writing down information. They can have all that information come to them. And for a long time, I read my RSS feeds, my Google Reader feeds, in Google Reader itself. As we saw on the previous slide, it is a little bit aesthetically unpleasing. It's a great tool, but it's not the most visually pleasing thing to look at. The tool that I use now to read all of my Google Reader information is a tool called Feedly. And the reason why I like to point out Feedly is that it turns that outline format that Google Reader uses into a magazine-style look that I can scroll through a little bit more quickly than I can when I'm just using the Google Reader interface. And Feedly synchronizes between all of the devices that I use. I can synchronize this with my laptop, with my Android phone, and with my iPad, and process all of my feeds from wherever I am. And at first, I didn't really think that Feedly would make that much of a difference in my reading and my consumption habits. But as it turned out, the more that I used it, the more I found that I was spending less time scrolling through information on Google Reader and more time reflecting and reading and actually reading on Feedly. So I found it to be a very good way for me to process information. And the other thing I can use Feedly for is I can share from Feedly to all of my favorite bookmarking services. I use Evernote as my primary service. Evernote.com is my primary service for bookmarking and saving things that I find online. But I can also send my notes from Feedly to any other bookmarking service that I'm subscribed to. And as I was saying about Evernote, the reason that I like Evernote is that I can not only save my bookmarks, I can annotate parts of a page, I can highlight part of a page and save just the part of the page that I need. Another popular service that does the same thing is Digo. The thing that I also like about Evernote, besides the fact that I can put parts of an article as well as the whole page or just the URL, is that Evernote syncs with all of my devices. Again, my laptop, my PC laptop, my Mac laptop, my iPad, and my Android phone. It syncs with all of them. And Evernote also allows me to save files. You save a whole file that I have on my desktop in my Evernote account and access that file on any device, anytime, any place that I am. As I mentioned with Digo, Digo is very popular among educators. The feature of Digo that I like to point out is that Digo's community of bookmarks can be searched. Public bookmarks can be searched, and it's a great way to discover new information. If you're a member of Digo, you can search the Digo community library and see what are other people bookmarking, what are other people sharing. And as an educator, I have found this to be useful as a way to see what are other educators using in their classrooms. And if a bookmark has 500 saves as opposed to 2 saves in it, I tend to gravitate towards the bookmarks that have been saved and shared more frequently than the ones that have been less shared and used less frequently. Not to say that that is a inherently good way to determine if the information is good or not, but there's something to be said about sharing and reuse of the same information. And the more popular it is, maybe there's something there that I need to investigate. And the final thing that I like to talk about when I'm discovering information to share with educators, or discovering tools that I want to share with educators, is that I set a timeline or a time limit on how long does it take me to figure out the purpose of a new tool, or the purpose of a new website that I've discovered, or the purpose of an article that I'm reading. Because I spend lots of time on the internet. I spend probably 40 or more hours a week using technology tools and trying out new technology tools. And if I can't figure out what the purpose is in 7 to 10 minutes or so, there's probably a good chance that other educators aren't going to figure out what the purpose of it is in 7 to 10 minutes. So if I'm taking this to a group of teachers in my school who are new to using technology in the classroom, I'm not going to start out with something that took me a long time to figure out. I'm going to start out with something that's was easier for me to figure out, and it's easier for me to convey that message to them. Because I think too often teachers approach using technology in the classroom and they get overwhelmed at the beginning, and if they feel overwhelmed, they're less likely to feel comfortable and less likely to develop a lesson plan using technology in their classrooms. And so they end up frustrated, and their students, in turn, end up frustrated or end up not getting the experience of using technology in their classrooms because their teacher has been frustrated by it. So the discussion piece. We've been able to discover content on the internet for a long time. But discussion on the internet and having easy, instant, two-way communication is the real power of the internet now. There are 3 tools that I'd like to point out for gathering feedback from our students, having discussion with our students about the content that we've discovered or the content that they have discovered online, or having a discussion or getting feedback on ideas we present in the classroom or ideas that their classmates present in the classroom. The first tool is a tool called Poll Everywhere. You can find Poll Everywhere at polleverywhere.com. There are two payment plans or use plans, I should say. There's a Poll Everywhere free service, and for educators you get 50 members in a classroom for free. And if you need more than that, there are upgrades available. The Poll Everywhere is a service that you can have your students use and you can use to gather feedback through cell phones. You can post a question to your students, and they can text the response to the question or to the survey question or the poll. It doesn't necessarily have to be a question. It could be an open-ended statement, and you ask the students to complete the statement. Another service that's similar to Poll Everywhere is one called Text the Mob, which you can find at textthemob.com. And again, it's a free service with up to 50 responses in each room. At textthemob.com, you can post a question to your classroom or to your audience and ask them to text in their response. One thing to keep in mind about both Poll Everywhere and Text the Mob is if you're asking students to send text messages and they don't have unlimited text messaging plans on their phones, they may incur text messaging charges. So you do need to consider that when you're introducing one of these tools to students who are under 18 years old. And the third tool that I really like for gathering feedback from our students using mobile devices is a tool called Socratic. You can find it at Socratic.com. And I'm actually going to have people try it out right now if you would like. What Socratic does is allows me to post a question to the class and gather feedback through any internet-connected device. It could be your cell phone, it could be your laptop, it could be your iPad, your Android tablet, your Kindle Fire, whatever you want it to be. Here's how it works. If you go to m.socrative.com and enter the room number 52234, then complete the sentence, keeping up with the, and type in your one-word answer or one-name answer. So m.socrative.com, enter the room number 52234, and complete the sentence, keeping up with the blank. And what you are seeing right now is the teacher aspect of Socrative. Now that I've changed the screen, you should be seeing the scrolling, waiting for responses. And here come all of our responses. Now we have 137 people in the room, so I will not wait for all the responses to come in. But as you can see, it's a simple way to gather feedback from students. And there are other, and I'm going to end the activity right now and go back to the Socrative teacher page. And you can see I also have options for multiple choice, true, false questions. You just participate in a short answer question. If I have multiple choice quizzes that are pre-made, I can store those in my library and roll those out whenever I want. We can use it as an exit ticket, or we can use this as a space race. And the space race is a fun group activity if you work in an environment where you may not have enough laptops or enough tablets for every student to use. You can pair up students or put them in groups of 3 or 4 and ask them to participate in teams to answer a series of questions, and it moves a little rocket ship across the screen. And it's a nice way to gather feedback from students, and your feedback is anonymous, so that if you are going to ask a question that maybe students aren't comfortable answering by raising hands in front of the classroom. For example, I work with a health teacher who's tried this out. And in freshman health curriculum, there are some questions that, and some statements that students may not want to make in front of the whole class, so the anonymous aspect of Socrative is a nice tool in that regard. I should also mention that I could download all the responses in a spreadsheet format or have it sent to my email if I need to keep a record of it. And I apologize for the lag that we're experiencing right now. And since I can't get back into my screen, we'll go from the slide outline. My apologies for the technical glitch here. Another tool that I like to use for discussion or virtual discussion, I should say, is a tool called Entry. You can find it ENTRI. It's a kind of a funny URL, entri.co. And the URL that I have posted right now is an open document that anyone can go and contribute to. Anyone who has this URL can go and contribute to the document. We could create a collaborative outline. We could post discussion questions. We could use it as an informal message board, if you will. One of the things that I encourage all the teachers I work with to do and all of my students to do is to blog. And blogging is not terribly new. Blogging's been around for a long time, actually. The thing that I like about blogging as an instructional practice and as a professional practice is that it forces teachers and students to stop and think and reflect on what it is they are doing in their classrooms. What are they doing as professionals? What things are we trying out? And we keep a record of what we're doing as professionals. The thing I like about blogging for students is it also forces them to stop, slow down, and think, and reflect. One of the things that I do with all of my classes is I make them write a weekly summary of what have they learned, what questions do they have moving forward. And it's not a long blog entry. Most of them are just a couple of paragraphs. But it is a way for students to stop, think, and reflect on what they're doing and post the questions that we have moving forward. The other thing that's nice about it is that we are building an ongoing record throughout the year or throughout a semester. What are we learning? What have we covered? What do I need to cover again as an instructor? What do I maybe not need to spend so much time on in the future because my students have all said, we get this, or we're comfortable with this, Mr. Byrne, we can move on. The tool that I like to use for classroom blogging right now is a tool called Posterous. You can find it at posterous.com. The reason that I like this tool is that when I have 125 students setting up blog accounts and something like Blogger or WordPress, it's a very time-consuming process. Either I have to make them all or I have to spend classroom time having students create the accounts. At Posterous.com, I can set up a group blog that all of my students can contribute to by simply sending an email to the blog at Posterous.com. I have a dummy one set up that if you want to try it right now, you can send an email to freetech4teachers@Posterous.com, and it will show up on my demonstration blog as soon as I moderate the comments. This way I don't have to create an account for you to join the group blog. The other nice feature about it is that if you attach a picture to the email, it's automatically embedded into the blog post. If you include a link to a YouTube video, it's automatically embedded into the blog post. It's a great tool for people who don't have a lot of technical skill or don't want to spend a lot of classroom time teaching students things like including a YouTube embed code in a blog post. It's very quick and easy tool to use. On the topic of classroom blogs or classroom websites or course websites, one of the tools that I love to use to cut down on my email inbox overflow, which is ridiculous at times, so I use a tool called Dropbox. Dropbox is an online storage place that I can organize all of my files according to the class that they came from or the class that I'm going to use them in. And my students can submit files to my Dropbox using a tool called Drop It To Me. DropItToMe.com synchronizes with my Dropbox account. Students go to my blog, they upload the file, they put in the password that I have set for the class, and they upload the file. So they don't see anyone's file other than their own, and it goes directly to my Dropbox account without ever going to my email. I can open up just about any file type inside my Dropbox account. Another tool that I love to use for communication between myself and my students, myself and my students' parents, and a tool that I'm seeing use of occasionally on a school-wide basis is Google Voice. If you're in the United States, you can use voice.google.com to send text messages to any cell phone that accepts text messages from your computer. This past fall, I put on my syllabus my Google Voice phone number, and I said to the students and parents, texting is encouraged. So they can text to my Google Voice number. They don't ever see my real phone number, my own personal cell phone, but I can reply from my computer. And the reason that I encourage texting is that text messages are opened at a much, much higher rate than email messages. I read somewhere recently that 90% of text messages are opened in the first 2 minutes that they're received, whereas half of emails are never opened. I'm not sure if half of emails are never opened is 100% true because you have to account for spam messages, but the point is students are texting, they're not emailing. There's another way to communicate and have that discussion between, have that conversation, and have that piece between you and your students. A nice little tool if you're trying to set up meetings or trying to set up appointments to meet with your students or meet with your students' parents. There's a tool called You Can Book Me. You can find it at youcanbook.me or simply Google youcanbookme.com. And it's a tool that integrates with my Google Calendar account. People can see when am I available, when am I not available, and reserve a time to meet with me. And finally, demonstration. There are great tools on the web for demonstration and knowledge. I just want to talk about a few of them conceptually right now. My favorite conceptual tool right now is making videos and having students make videos to demonstrate things that they have learned or things that they have developed on their own. For example, one of the projects that I often do just after February vacation and with my students is creating short documentary films on settling the Western United States. And in the past, I used a tool called JCut, which used to be available at jcut.com. It was an online video editing tool, and it's since been bought out by BlackBerry, and hopefully will reemerge in the future. But in the meantime, I'm using a tool called WeVideo. You can find it at wevideo.com. It's an online video editing tool. But what I like about wevideo.com is it's a collaborative video editing tool. So much like in Google Documents where I can share my work and share the editing of a page with someone else, in WeVideo you can do the same. So I can have multiple students working on the same video project by simply making each other collaborators on their project. And in my school district, which serves 9 towns, it takes about an hour and 10 minutes to drive across, and we have a mix in our school of netbooks that are Linux-based. We have some Apple computers, and we have some Windows PC desktops. So we have a hodgepodge of computers, and students can access WeVideo from any of those computers. They can work together on their projects from wherever they are within the district. The flipped classroom model is becoming more and more popular, thanks in part to the Khan Academy. I'm not going to get into a discussion of the Khan Academy right now, but creating screencasts is a good way for you to give directions. It's a good way for students to give directions. It's a good way for students to talk about what they've learned, to perhaps record a slideshow and do an audio slideshow, similar to what I'm doing right now with my computer and my phone. But at screener.com, students can record up to 5 minutes of their computer screen, and it will show anything that's on their computer screen. They can talk over it. They could do a simple narrated slideshow. They could give directions to each other. If I was using a drawing program on my computer to teach math, I could record myself talking about how to solve a math problem. Apple's iBooks author program came out about 3.5, 4 weeks ago now. It's very, very popular. I'm sorry, I skipped ahead of myself. The other tool that I like to use for screencasting is Ning. My apologies there. They're saying about Apple's iBooks author. It's a great tool if you have Apple computers at your school, and if you have iPads for your students to access the books that they author or the books that you author. Otherwise, if you create with the iBooks author and download it as a PDF, it loses some of its interactivity that the iBooks author is very much designed to do. There are other tools for making interactive textbooks or interactive books online. But one of them is Simple Booklet. So you can find it at simplebooklet.com. Simplebooklet.com has 2 tiers. There's a commercial product that you have to pay for, and there's also an education product that is free. The education version, which you'll have to find by going to simplebooklet.com, in the lower right-hand corner you'll find the option for education version. Education version gives you all the options and all the features of the paid version for free, and it gives your students those options as well. In simplebooklet.com, your students can create pages that include text, video, images, audio files, Google Maps, so they can develop their own simple, interactive, multimedia textbook. And finally, the best way for students to demonstrate is to really be able to share and develop materials that they can learn from the process of creating and learn from the process of sharing. One of the simplest things that's been out there for a long time is wiki spaces, or any wiki program, if you want to use WetPaint or many of the other great wiki services that are out there. But I encourage you to have a place where your students can share their work and share what they learned, because it's in the sharing that they really realize that someone else is taking an interest. And in my case, what I do with wiki spaces is I have students take ownership of a particular unit. For example, when we study the 1920s in my classroom, every student is responsible for a subject or a topic during the 1920s. Everything that goes into the class wiki, which includes videos, which includes images, includes essays that they write, all go into the wiki space page that they're in charge of. And by sharing and demonstrating to each other what they've learned, that becomes a collaborative learning opportunity. And it becomes a time when students really begin to feel that they are part of a group, that they are part of the learning process for each other, because their final test is based in part on the content that's contributed to the wiki itself. And again, if you want to ask me more questions about this, we're going to have a question and answer period now. But if you need to get in contact with me, if you want to contact me, you can at richardbyrne@freetech4teachers.com. So Greg, I know you've been looking at the chat, and I have not been looking at the chat.
Okay.
So please jump.
All right. Can you hear me, Richard?
I can.
Okay. If I know you're having some technical issues, but some people were asking if you could make your screen a full screen now.
I can't.
Okay, that's fine. We can still see it. We just thought, okay, I see where it's grayed out. Not a problem. Yeah, somebody was asking about wiki spaces. With sharing, is there a protection for someone not changing the original post?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And the other thing you can do with wiki spaces, if you are the creator of the wiki or the administrator of the wiki, you can have more than one administrator. For example, I work with an English teacher, and we do collaborative projects where both administrators. I can see the last edit that anyone made, and I can revert back to the previous edit. So if a student does come along and try to wipe out if Susie hates Billy and tries to wipe out all of Billy's work, I can go back and restore it to a previous version.
Okay, great. Here's a question about Twitter, and I think a lot of people might fall into this category, including me a couple of years ago. Some people, one person saying, I still don't get Twitter, but, I'm not giving up on it. What advice do you have for people that are trying to, get started with Twitter, and so maybe ideas on how to get started so they can get some traction?
Yeah, the number one thing that I recommend when you're getting on Twitter is after you start to follow people. For example, if you follow me, which you can do at twitter.com/rmbyrne, take a look at who I'm following and take a look at the lists of people that I'm following and go through my list. And basically, you kind of steal my friends, for lack of a better explanation. Because if I'm following a certain group of people, there's probably a good reason. The reason is we've had some good conversations in the past, so I follow along. So once you start to follow some people, the next thing you should do is use the at function on Twitter and actually send messages directly at someone, as opposed to just writing a Twitter update and say, I'm trying out this new lesson with my math class, or I'm trying out this new lesson. If you don't have a lot of followers yet, there's a good chance that not many people are going to see that message. But if you say, at @rmbyrne, I was in your webinar today, and I'm trying out Twitter, and I have a question about X, Y, or Z, I'm going to see your message. Whereas if you had just posted that message without the at @rmbyrne, there's a good chance that I might not see it because I have lots of people that I'm following. So get my attention, or get the person's attention that you're trying to have that conversation with. The other way to think about it, if you go to a cocktail party and you simply stand in the corner and talk at random, people aren't going to pay attention except maybe say, hey, there's a crazy person in the corner talking at random. But if you walk up to someone and say, hi, my name is Richard, and start having a conversation, then Twitter becomes much more conversational, and you can get a lot more out of it.
Okay. We've had some questions about the differences between Google Reader and Feedly. And since Feedly was brand new to me, I couldn't answer that online previously. I said there's probably some functionality differences, but I don't know what they are.
Yeah. So the number one thing to know about Feedly is that it works with Google Reader. Think of it as your customized magazine, really. I have all the same content that I would have in Google Reader, but it's in a magazine-style display, and it gives me more sharing options. If I read an article in Google Reader, by default, Google Reader only gives me the options to share via other Google services. If I'm reading that same article in my Feedly account, I can share it to my Evernote account, I can share it directly to Twitter, I can share it directly to my Facebook account, I can share it to hundreds of social services. And the other thing about Feedly is it is just much faster to flip through, which again, I didn't necessarily think was a big deal at first, but the more I used it, the more I realized that I was actually processing the content quite a bit quicker, because it put 12 articles on my iPad screen as opposed to just one article at a time.
Okay, I think that helps.
Okay.
Somebody asked a quick question about You Can Book Me, and they were wondering, can you set certain times that are available, or do they have access to your whole calendar, or how does that work?
Yeah, you can block out times. If I want to block out all of this week, for example, I can block out those times so that no one can see that, and no one can reserve any time in that section.
Okay, very cool. Another question is, my school blocks YouTube. What can I do?
Yep.
Are there any options?
Yeah, actually, from the shameless self-promotion department, On my website, Free Tech for Teachers, I do have a list of 47 alternatives to YouTube. They're all video sharing sites that are designed for a variety of purposes. But the one that comes to mind off the top of my head is, and I just totally blanked on it. I'm sorry, it's SchoolTube, which you can find at schooltube.com. The other service that comes to mind is WatchKnow. You can find it at WatchKnow, K-N-O-W, watchknow.org, which is designed more for elementary school and middle school, but there is high school content as well. At watchknow.org, it's organized according to grade level, according to subject and topic. And some videos are from YouTube, but there are thousands of videos that are not from YouTube, organized under watchknow.org.
Okay, a person is also chatting in, does it interact with Google and Yahoo? And my assumption is yes, but I don't know for sure.
You're referring to WatchKnow?
You can book me. Someone's asking, does it integrate with Google Calendar, Yahoo Calendar,
Yes.
etc.?
Yes, it integrates with Google Calendar.
Okay. People are asking, what's your strategy on archiving data stored in some of these tools or services?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that I always try to look at when I'm going to use a service that I use to generate new content of my own, or I have students generate content of their own, is the option to export the data. I think that's really important to have data portability so that I can, if I decide that I don't want to use Google Documents anymore, for example, I can download all of those documents. And you can usually discover that pretty quickly when you sign up for a new service. Is that the question that people are asking, or more of the bookmarking, archiving information we find?
It was here. I'll read it verbatim. What is your strategy on archiving data stored in all these tools/services, like record keeping?
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's really addressing the question of what do I do with stuff that I generate online. I do download anything that I think I'm going to need for many years to come. I'll download that and store it on a local drive so that I can always access it, even if I'm not connected online or if that service shuts down, for example. But in terms of other material, almost everything that I create now, I share to my Evernote account, which I mentioned earlier, because in Evernote I can organize all of my files, from anything from a bookmark that I have of your website to entire papers that students have written. I can save those all in my Evernote account and take them anywhere, and I can organize them in whatever manner I want.
Okay. The person is responding that you answered his question.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Here's another good one. How would you recommend using these tools during a live online course? Any advice or experience with that?
Yeah, I've used the Socratic tool that I demoed. I've used in other webinars in the past. And if you have the time to let all the responses come in, one of the features I didn't show there is that we could have eliminated responses and then voted down on 3 or 4 of the most common responses. Basically, I do a runoff election using Socratic. That's one of the tools that you can use in a live format. Text the mob or poll everywhere. You can use it in a live format in the same way, and I've done that in the past as well.
Okay.
So that's one way you can use the tool live.
Okay. Here's another question. Have you found Pinterest, P-I-N-T-E-R-E-S-T,
Yep,
to be useful for educators?
I'm still up in the air on Pinterest. I have an account. I am pinning things in Pinterest myself. I'm still trying to figure out where it fits into my workflow. I'm not saying that Pinterest is not going to be valuable for educators. There are some great boards already made in Pinterest. I discovered some not too long ago that had fantastic elementary school reading lesson plans attached to it. So I think as more educators gravitate to it, it will become more and more useful. Just personally, I haven't found where it's going to fit in my workflow yet. One other example that I just saw this morning, Larry Perlazzo, who's an ELL, ESL teacher in California and writes a great blog as well, has started to pin a lot of photographs that he's using in his classroom with his students. So I think that's one possible classroom use for it.
Right, and somebody just chatted in, Pinterest can be used as a way to mark websites when students are gathering information for research.
Right. Yep.
Okay, great. Here's someone that's asking about, do you know of a service to store Outlook email outside of Outlook? I'm not sure we talked about that, but.
No, I don't, because I personally have not used Outlook in a number of years. I could Google it for you, but I don't know off the top of my head. I apologize for that.
That's fine. How do you curate or organize your content knowledge? I think you talked a little bit maybe in the beginning about that. I'm not sure when this person joined us. So,
the tool that I'm using now to curate everything that I find is Evernote. Again, I'm using Evernote for a long time I used Google Bookmarks. I used Google Bookmarks until about September, October of last fall, when they got rid of the list-making feature in Google Bookmarks, and Google has shut down a number of other side projects, and Google Bookmarks was a side project. So I was just afraid that it was going to go away completely. What I've found with Evernote is that I love the tagging feature. I have hundreds of bookmarks in Evernote, and I simply tag them. When I bookmark something, I tag it. For example, if I'm looking at an Android application that I want to try out, I tag it Android, and then when I go back to my huge gallery of all my bookmarks, I simply click on the Android tag, and all of my Android bookmarks come up. And that's a service that I use. I also, when I tag something, I'll attach a small note to it. If I'm looking at a website and I see a great lesson plan, I'll tag it as a social studies lesson plan, and I'll also note how did I find that. Did I find it through a tweet on Twitter? Did a friend of mine email it to me, and I want to credit that person, or just keep track of that information? I can do a lot of that stuff in Evernote.
Okay. Here's another question. Somebody's asking that they have the willingness to start to use technology in their teaching, but they just, they're not sure where to start, and they're asking about maybe some, low risk, low levels of skill type things that they might want to, try with, so they wouldn't fall flat in their face.
Right. And that's a common question. The tool that I most frequently show to people who are new to using technology in the classroom is Google Documents. And the reason that I do that is that Google Documents, when you create an account and you start using it, you'll notice it's very similar to the familiar word processing tool of your choice. If you've been using Microsoft Word or Works or whatever word processor you've been using, you'll notice that the functionality is very similar, but you have the added option for sharing your document. Let's say I want to collaborate with you, Greg, on a document. I can set you up as a collaborator by clicking on the share button in the upper right-hand corner, entering your email address. You get the email, and you can now edit the document, or at least read the document depending on what I've set as my specification.
Okay.
And that's a great tool for peer editing. I always introduce my students to that as a peer editing tool.
Okay, great. Richard, here's another question, which especially with public, I guess in private schools too. Someone's asking about your school's policy on privacy issues. Does Richard need to get parental permission for certain activities? How does he protect students' identities?
Yep. That's a great question. In my high school, and again, I teach in a high school, so it's different at the elementary school level, but in the high school, when the students come to the first day of school, they get the student handbook, and part of the student handbook says that your student's likeness or image may be used in a variety of formats, including online. And parents and students can opt out of that. With 1,300 students, it's easier to collect the minority of opt-out forms as opposed to the majority of opt-in forms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the strategy that my school has used. We have a very open policy towards filtering. Our students can access YouTube, for example. Our students can access many social networking sites within the school on the school network. The one exception being Facebook. But
okay.
even with that, as a teacher, if I wanted to use Facebook for a lesson, I could ask for the network administrator to open up access for my 30 students for that class period.
Okay. Okay. Let me just curious. Out of 1,300 students, how many families say, I'm opting out. I don't want this to work for my child?
I couldn't give you a school-wide figure, but I can tell you from in my own practice in the last 2 years, I've had just under 250 students, and I've had 3 that have opted out of that.
Okay, so that's a pretty small percentage.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's somebody asking, and I know you said there's 47 alternatives to YouTube. Why would someone want to use SchoolTube over YouTube?
Well, if you couldn't access YouTube in your school, SchoolTube would be an option. The other feature of SchoolTube is you can set up a SchoolTube classroom account or a SchoolTube school-wide account to set up sharing of videos within your school or within a targeted audience, so that you're not sharing necessarily to the entire world, but you're sharing to part of the world.
Okay.
If you will.
All right. Well, we have a few more.
I should note about SchoolTube that those features I just mentioned are not free, but the basic uses of SchoolTube are free.
Okay. Well, we have about 2 minutes left, and if we can take maybe 1 or 2 more questions, I just want to repeat that you will receive an email when the video is completed with this session. You will also have access to the webinar slides that Richard has generously agreed to provide for everybody. And if you want to chat in one more question, I think that's about all we have time left for. And what I want to do right now is thank everyone for attending. We know your time is valuable, so we really appreciate your decision to spend some time with us. You will receive a brief 8-item evaluation via email. Your feedback's important, so we hope you'll complete it. Our next event is an in-person event here in Baltimore, Maryland on March 6th with Steve Sugar and Linda Raudenbush on using low-tech games in education and training. And I don't see anybody chatting in a question. We're almost at our time here. So until then, this is Greg Williams for Richard Byrne and our staff at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, saying thank you, and we will see you next time. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.